and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Chag speaking to you from south of Jerusalem here in the holy, beautiful land of Israel. Today is the 5th day of Sivan 5784. It's June 11th, 2024. Today is 49 days, which are 7 weeks of the Omer. You know what that means? The Omer count has been completed because we are instructed to count 7 complete weeks. And you know what that means? It means that tonight, the 50th night, the 50th day following the first day of Passover, is Chag Shavuot, the festival of Shavuot, the third of the 3 Torah-mandated festivals, Regalim, meaning pilgrimage festivals, where we are commanded, instructed to go up to Jerusalem and be present in front of HaShem in the Holy Temple. And of course, on Chag Shavuot, we are instructed to bring our bikurim, our firstfruits. So it's a very exciting time of year. That's not the only offering, by the way, that is unique to the festival of Shavuot. There's also the shtei lechem, the 2 loaves of wheat, because this is also the beginning of the wheat harvest. And we honor and sanctify the wheat harvest just like we did the barley harvest the day after the first day of Passover. The Omer offering, which was the barley harvest, which was the day that we began counting. So there's a direct correlation, a direct relationship between the barley harvest, which takes place on the 2nd day of Passover, and the wheat harvest, which is honored and sanctified on Shavuot. And Shavuot is a 1-day festival, but you might ask the question, a very good question. We are instructed to bring our first fruits of the 7 different species, unique to Israel, or not unique to Israel, but they are mentioned specifically in the Torah, and they are grapes and olives and dates and barley and wheat and what are the other 2? Grapes, barley, dates, wheat. I can't think of them right now. I apologize for that. Don't have it in front of me, but there are 7 altogether, and they're not necessarily all ripe and ready to be brought to the Holy Temple on the first day of Shavuot. So actually, Shavuot marks the beginning of the season when we are instructed to bring our first fruit offerings, and they may be brought all throughout the summer. And it seems that there's evidence that Tu B'Av, the wonderful day that follows 1 week after Tisha B'Av, was a day where many people brought up their first fruits, because by that time all the different first fruits would have been ripe. So it's a very festive time, Shavuot. It's sort of the beginning of the summer season. If Passover inaugurated springtime, then I would say that Shavuot sort of inaugurated the summer season. And certainly around this time in Israel, the weather begins to settle down from the very during springtime in Israel. You might have a very cold day, then a very hot day, a very windy day, a very balmy day, and at this point in the year it begins to settle down and it just becomes hot, more hot and less hot. If you listen to a weather report in Israel during the summer, that's about what it's going to be. Tomorrow will be hotter, or tomorrow will be a little less hot than it was today, but it's all good. We don't mind the hot weather. And before we get a little bit more into Shavuot, let's remind everybody that this coming Shabbat, we read Parashat Naso, the second Parsha, the second Torah reading of the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. It begins Numbers chapter 4, verse 21, concludes chapter 7, verse 8-9. And very quickly, a quick review. It begins with the continuation from last week's Parsha of the numbering of the three families of the tribe of Levi, and these are the whose encampment was right next to the tabernacle, because they were to not only tend to the service in the tabernacle, that is the Kohanim, who are of the tribe of Levi, but also they are in charge of the transportation of the tabernacle, disassembling it when it's time to move on, carrying it through the wilderness to the next destination that God determines, and then assembling it. And each of the families had different responsibilities, and they are all enumerated. Again, began last week's Parshat, the conclusion of Parshat Bamidbar, and it continues the beginning of this week's Parashat Naso. And then other highlights in the Parshat feature a description of the Sota, a very fascinating and, I would imagine, strange to our modern perspective, ceremony concerning a woman who is suspected of infidelity by her husband, and this is a ceremony that proves either her innocence or not her innocence, and it's very involved. If we have time, we'll discuss it a little bit later in the broadcast, but that's all I'm going to say about it at this moment. And then following that is the description of the Nazir, the Nazirite, who makes a vow that he is not going to have any grape product for a certain amount of time, not going to cut his hair, he cannot be exposed to a corpse, even a family member that dies, he can't be present at the grave. If he is accidentally exposed, and he has to begin the process again. This, again, I'm not going to get into the details right now, but it was a voluntary thing. A man or a woman, both, they could become a Nazir or a Nazirah, and it was sort of an additional measure taken. I was not necessarily approved wholeheartedly by our sages, because God gave us commandments and we don't need to add on to that. But if a person felt for whatever reason compelled to take on added strictures for a certain limited amount of time, they were definitely allowed to. And this, they say, is the reason why one of the offerings they bring when they conclude their Nazirut is a sin offering, because it was a bit of a sin to think that the commandments that God explicitly gave us to perform aren't enough. So that is the Nazir. And the other highlight of Parshat Naso is the Birkat HaKohanim, the blessing of the priests, the blessing that everybody is familiar with. And let's just read that very quickly. Chapter 6, verse 21. וידבר השם אל משה לאמור דבר אל אהרון ואל בניו לאמור כל דברכו את בני ישראל אמור להם. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, so shall you bless the children of Israel, saying to them, and here is the blessing in Hebrew, then in English, Yavarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yer Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, Isa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May Hashem bless you and safeguard you. May Hashem illuminate his countenance for you and be gracious to you. May Hashem lift his countenance to you and establish peace for you. And then we're told, V'samu et shmi b'nei Yisrael v'ani avarachem. Let them place my name upon the children of Israel, and I shall bless them. I, meaning Hashem. The blessing comes not from the Kohanim. They are the vehicle. They are the conduit through which the blessing reaches us. But the blessing comes directly from Hashem. And that is known as Birkat Kohanim in English and Hebrew, and of course it is the priestly blessing in English. And this is followed by, let's just read the first verse of chapter 7. It was on that day that Moshe finished erecting the tabernacle, that he anointed it, sanctified it, and all its utensils, and the altar and all its utensils. And he had anointed and sanctified them. The leaders of Israel, the heads of the fathers' households, brought offerings. So we are exactly at the same moment in time that we've been on and off since the conclusion of the book of Exodus, when the tabernacle was first completed. So we're in that first day again. And remember, that's how we began the book of Leviticus as well, with the inauguration of the tabernacle. And on that day, the first day of Nisan, the first of the 12 tribal leaders began to bring gifts, offerings to the tabernacle, and the concluding verses, and actually it's a very long chapter. It's actually 89 verses here that describe each of the offerings of each of the 12 tribal leaders, and they're all identical. And then the concluding verses of the book of Parashat Naso give the total of everything that was brought. So a tremendous amount of offerings, including utensils for the tabernacle, gold and silver, etc., were brought. And that concludes quickly Parashat Naso. So we went over Naso quickly because we have other things to talk about. Another thing which I haven't mentioned yet, but it is another thing that I'm sure you've heard of, and it's another reason for incredibly joyous celebration here in Israel, and that is, of course, the rescue of 4 of our hostages from Gaza. If you have the opportunity, look, it's all over social media, videos of the actual rescue operation, videos that were from the cameras, the helmet cameras, the body cameras of the special units that went in to rescue the 4 hostages from 2 different locations, and in the heart of Gaza, and in the heart of a extremely densely populated residential area. They were being held by civilians, not Hamas militants, but civilians. One was a Al Jazeera reporter, and one was a doctor. They were holding them hostages, and our units went in, backed up by tremendous forces to give them cover and to provide diversion, and just an amazing rescue. And again, I'm just going to read the names of the 4 people who were rescued. The most famous name you probably have heard is Noah Argamani, who was, there was a video of her being taken into Gaza. She's being surrounded on a motorcycle as she's going into Gaza, and she's reaching out toward her boyfriend, who was also being marched into Gaza. He's still there, still being held captive. And it became sort of a symbol of what took place that day. And of course now there's a beautiful photograph of her being embraced by her father after being rescued. Her rescue came on her father's birthday, amazingly enough, and you may recall that her mother has terminal brain cancer. And she made a plea to the entire world and to the President of the United States when it first happened. I have one wish in my life before I die, and that is to see my daughter again. Her situation has deteriorated tremendously since the day that Noah was taken captive, which was about 246 days before she was rescued. But she's still alive, thank God, and she has been reunited with her daughter. The other 3 people who were in a separate apartment were Shlomi Ziv, Almog Meir John, and Andrei Kozlov. And Almog Meir John was greeted when he returned by tens of his friends. It was beautiful. There's beautiful videos, if you can get to them, all over Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, X, and I'm sure in other places. And unfortunately, his father, who died just hours before his son was rescued. When the army went to notify his father, they found his body, a lifeless body. He died of a heartbreak. He died, he wasn't eating, he wasn't taking care of himself. He had lost 20 kilo, and he died of a broken heart. He died of worry, and that is very tragic. He was actually buried yesterday. And Shlomi Ziv was the oldest of the group. The others were in their 20s. He, I think, is 40 or 41, and he was greeted by his family. And the other hostage, Andrei Kozlov, made Aliyah. He came to Israel from Russia about a year and a half ago on his own. And he was at the Nova festival when he was kidnapped. And his parents, who still live in Russia, came in to see him. And again, there's just a beautiful, touching video of his parents coming to see him. They were all kept in the hospital for a few days for observation. They apparently were very malnutritioned. And doctor says there are signs that they were, there was torture all throughout their captivity. But when his parents first see him and he sees them, he just falls to his knees. And it's all very moving. And as soon the rescue took place on Shabbat, and people who weren't observing Shabbat heard about it very quickly. And there were celebrations and people on the beach. There's videos of the lifeguards making announcements on the beach, and all of a sudden there's a big shout of joy and singing and dancing, and people who were observing Shabbat were told by neighbors, so everybody knew. And even around the world, there were celebrations. Jews were celebrating. Israelis who were in Athens were celebrating, and in Australia, Jews were celebrating, and all over the world. And it's really an amazing thing. And the people the forces that went in to rescue them, who risked their lives, and the commander of the force, Arnon Zamora, was killed. He was the one casualty. He was the first one who made contact with the terrorists who were guarding the hostages, and he was killed by a single bullet and laid to rest in Har Herzl, Mount Herzl, Israel's main military cemetery in Jerusalem. Thousands of people attended his funeral. And it's just an amazing thing. And another amazing thing is the reaction of world leaders who were, why did you kill so many Palestinians? Well, the reason why Palestinians were killed is because after after our forces took the hostages and were rushing to the helicopters to take them to safety, they were attacked by hundreds of Hamas militants, terrorists with RPGs and AK-47s. So they didn't lay down and die. They fought back, and we had air cover as well to take them out. So, yeah, hundreds of terrorists and civilians who were part of this whole thing. I mean, these people were held for 8 months in a civilian area, densely populated civilian area. They all knew they were there. They all were collaborators in this. They knew. So I don't really understand, where the innocence comes in here. I suppose young children, you can't hold them accountable. But this is what happens when you take hostages and expect that Israel will do everything we can to redeem our hostages. This is not simply a modern Israeli tradition. It is a Jewish, it is a commandment. It is a Torah commandment to redeem hostages. And so we do everything we can to rescue hostages, and if there are casualties among those who kept them hostage, so be it. United States, President Biden, he was upset that this might kill his plans to put an end to the war and hand a victory to Hamas. That was his response. And Kamala Harris, in a speech made in Michigan, where they're trying to get every vote from supporters of Hamas and terror against Israel. In Michigan, her speech was all about the innocent Gazans who were killed. She didn't mention once the hostages. This is what Israel, this is the reality of today. But I know that there are millions of people out there who also were so thrilled to hear about the rescue and are so happy for the 4 who were rescued and so happy for Israel. And God willing, we'll be able to rescue more. And certainly this rescue puts more pressure on Hamas to throw down their arms. I don't think they will. And to give up the hostages. I don't think they will. But that's what it's all about. What was I going to say? Oh, another aspect of this is that whenever Israel is presented with a deal to release hostages, it always involves releasing hundreds of terrorists for each hostage. So take that into account when you say, well, for 4 hostages, a couple of hundred Palestinians, Gazans were killed. Okay, so if you're telling us that each hostage is worth 1,000 terrorists, then rescuing each hostage, you're lucky that we didn't take down 4,000 people. Sorry, that's the reality of it. You want to play hardball, then you face the consequences. No apologies here. We're thrilled that our four brothers and sisters and daughters and sons and father of children are all back with their families, and the entire nation of Israel, the entire people of Israel is family. And that's something that I don't know if the world understands, but we're family here. And every single one of us matters to every single one of us. Let's talk a bit about Shavuot. Shavuot is described in detail in Parashat Kitavo, which is in the book of Numbers, a book of the Deuteronomy, chapter 26, and it says, it will be when you enter the land that HaShem your God gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take of the first of every fruit of the ground you will bring in your land that HaShem your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket and go to that place that HaShem your God will choose to make his name rest there. You shall come to whoever will be the Kohen in those days, and you shall say to him, I declare today to HaShem your God that I have come to the land that HaShem swore to our forefathers to give us. The Kohen shall take the basket from your hand and lay it before the altar of HaShem your God. Okay, so we are commanded to bring our first fruits in a basket, a tineh, it's called in Hebrew, and present them at the altar. But there's a strong connection made in these verses between bringing this offering and entering the land of Israel and dwelling in the land of Israel. And I asked the question, what's different about this holiday and this offering from all the other festival pilgrimages and it mentioned in Torah and their offerings? I mean, all the offerings are from the land of Israel. So what's special about the Bikurim, the first fruit offerings? Well, here's my answer. You may have heard me go over this in past years, but I'm going to say it again. I'll try to say it quickly because time is of the essence. First fruits. Let's go back. Let's go back in time. Let's go back to the 6 days of creation. Let's go back to day 6. Hashem has created a beautiful world. It's all good. It's very good, in fact. Tov Me'od. He saw everything. It's very good. On the 6th day, God created the crown of creation. He created man. And he placed man in the Garden of Eden. And he said to man, you can eat from the fruit of all the trees of the Garden of Eden, except one tree, the tree of knowledge. And it was all good. And this was Hashem's plan. His presence was in the garden with man, and they will dwell together forever. And then, of course, man ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and that compelled Hashem to make man leave the Garden of Eden into a land of kots v'dardar, a land of thorns and thistles, where he has to sweat for the for his sustenance. But what did man exactly do in the Garden of Eden? What did he take? He took the first fruits. He took something that didn't belong to him. It belonged to Hashem. So, once man was forced out of Garden of Eden, once man had put the kibosh on Hashem's plans, Hashem had to have plan B. And plan B is the history of mankind. Plan B is man slowly getting back to where he needs to be, and that begins with Avraham, who was told to go to the land of Canaan, the land of Canaan, and he's the first human who comprehended that there's just one God in the world. And slowly, he becomes a family, and that family slowly becomes a bunch of tribes, and those tribes become a nation, and those nations eventually get to the land of Israel. And what do we know about the land of Israel? Well, in the land of Israel is Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem is Mount Moriah, also known as the Temple Mount, Har HaBayit, and that place where the temple stands is the place of the Garden of Eden. And the altar where man brings his offerings and where man brings his first fruits is the very place where man was created. That's why man can mechaper, that's why man can atone at that place, because that's where he first sinned. That's where he first went wrong. And we also know that the altar is made of the same material that man was made of the earth. It's an altar of earth. Man was made of the earth. So when man comes to the altar with his first fruits, he is saying, I took these. They're not mine. They belong to you, Hashem. A man is returning what he took that didn't belong to him. And with that, man is atoning for that first misdeed. And when he does that, he is welcomed back into the place of the Garden of Eden, which now is the place of the Holy Temple. So, quickly now, what's the connection? Because we haven't talked about it yet, but there's a connection also between Chag Shavuot, the festival of Shavuot, and Matan Torah, the receiving of Torah at Mount Sinai, because we know that it was the same day. It was 50 days after leaving Egypt. Israel arrived at Mount Sinai and received the Torah. So what's the connection between these first fruits and receiving Torah? So let's stay with our motif. We're at the altar. The altar is the place also not only where man was created, it's the very place where the tree of knowledge stood. Again, this is all according to Midrash. And if we go westward just a little, we arrive in the place of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies was the Even HaShtiyah, the foundation stone, and on the foundation stone is the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant. And atop the Ark of the Covenant is the Kaporet, the cover of the Ark of the Covenant, and upon the Ark of the Kaporet are the Chruvim, the cherubim. And within the Ark are the two Luchot HaBrit, the two tablets of the law, which we're told are placed in the Ark, and a Sefer Torah, a scroll of the Torah written by Moshe. They're both placed in the Ark. And this is the place of the tree of life. And the Kruvim, the cherubim, which are atop of the Ark of the Covenant, are the same cherubim, the same Kruvim that Hashem placed in the Garden of Eden when he sent man out in order to guard over the tree of life. You can read it right there in the book of Genesis. God placed Kruvim, cherubim, in order to guard with a fiery sword, in order to guard over the tree of life. And what is the Torah? It's the tree of life. We call it the tree of life. Sefer Eitz HaChaim, it's the tree of life. So when we are able to enter into the land of Israel, we are able to fulfill all the commandments of the Torah, the tree of life, because all the offerings and the Shemitah, the sabbatical year, and the Jubilee, and so many of the commandments, more than half of the commandments can only be fulfilled in the land of Israel. So even though we receive the Torah outside the land of Israel, we can't actually fulfill it completely except when we're inside the land of Israel. So the first fruits, the returning of what we took that we shouldn't have taken, turning back to HaShem, to its rightful owner, is our key, right? It's our key for getting back into the land. That's why the Torah makes this connection between when you enter into the land that HaShem gives you as an inheritance and you possess it and dwell in it, that you take the first of every fruit of the ground that you bring in from your land that HaShem, your God, gives you, and place it in a basket and go to the place that HaShem, your God, will choose to make his name rest there. He chose the place that you took it from. So this is an amazing thing. We are actually fulfilling HaShem's plan B, because when we're at the Holy Temple, we are in the immediate presence of HaShem, because that's where his Shekhinah, that's where his presence dwells. And it is actually a recreation, as it were, of the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, because here man and God can be in Bakirvav, in a nearness, as close as possible, and dwell together. This has always been Hashem's plan. It's always been his dream. And again, had man not eaten and not taken from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, man would still be dwelling in the Garden of Eden, and all this history of humanity would not have taken place. But man did what he did. History has unfolded. And yes, we're still trying to get back to that place, but we know how to do it, and it's been done before, and we have to build that holy temple. And perhaps all the troubles that we're facing in the world today, and the challenges that Israel is up against, all this is just the lead-in, the prelude to great days ahead, when we will rebuild the Holy Temple, and we will be bringing our first fruits to the Holy Temple, and we will be making amends once again for our misdeeds of the past, and God willing, this will all happen soon. God willing. So I see we have just a few minutes left in our Temple Talk broadcast today. So what else can we talk about right now? Let's go back again. Like I said at the very beginning of the broadcast, today is 49 days of the counting of the Omer. We've completed the counting, and let's recall that the purpose of the counting is to help us to perfect ourselves, to refine ourselves spiritually, so that we be ready to receive the Torah. We have to be our very best. We have to be on our very best behavior and at our very highest level in order to receive the Torah. And every year on Chag Shavuot, we do receive Torah anew. And everybody is able to receive the Torah. The Torah was given in the wilderness, because in the wilderness it's no man's land. Anybody is welcome to receive the Torah. Nobody can say, this is mine and not yours. It's open for everybody. It is the tree of life. It is a way to live. And certainly the 10 Commandments, which were received on Chag Shavuot, and which are basically the 10 Commandments of being a human being, are open and available for everybody. Go for it. Wish everybody Chag Shavuot Sameach, a very, very happy Shavuot. Thanks for being with me. Temple Talk.